Thank you. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce Michael Cane. His introduction to sailing was when he was 8 years old on a family vacation in the Norfolk Broads of England. At the age of 17, his brother and he built a dinghy from a kit. It was called a Graduate and was 12 feet 6 inches long. They raced it together. Subsequently, Michael did some sailing on the Solent. And for those of you who don't know, I had to look it up. A strait between the Isle of Wight and the mainland Great Britain, and once took part in a Cowes Week on a 12-meter. He started sailing at the RCYC soon after he came to Canada in 1970. The first boat he sailed there was a beautiful old R boat called Highlander. He both raced and cruised on it. In the 1980s, Michael crewed on a Shark for a number of years before buying his own, which he called Sloan Ranger. That boat became the family cottage on the island. Additionally, Michael competed in the various Shark regattas, and I understand sometimes with John, who's sitting across the table from him. They sold the Shark, and after a brief hiatus, purchased another called Cahoots. The family still has this boat while Michael races with his two sons, Simon and Stephen. They also have a non-such, which they cruise and also use as a family cottage. Michael has also participated in a number of cruises in the Caribbean with his Shark buddies, his RCYC Shark buddies. These cruises are usually a week long on a rental sloop or a catamaran. Please welcome Michael Cane. There you are.
Thank you, Diane. As Diane was saying, I've sailed with some of my friends here in the Caribbean, and usually it's been a week-long
Michael, make sure the microphone is up near your mouth.
And but the trip I'm going to talk about was much longer than that. It was 3 weeks, and it so happened that we had some friends that lived. I had some friends, Asta and Fred Evans, who owned a beautiful yacht, a Bristol 41 called the Lady Asta. I sailed a couple of times before with them in the previous yacht, along with the late Bob Purcell, including a trip from BVI to Antigua.
Michael, you do have to speak up.
Okay. Fred was getting on in the years, and they both wanted to do a final long sail before they sold the boat. And they felt they needed some assistance. So they needed a couple of strong and able seamen to help them. So myself and John Blackburn here volunteered. And what I have here is the log from that trip. One thing I don't have is original photographs. For some reason, we did take pictures during the trip, but somehow they disappeared. Anyway, our trip started in Toronto, and John and I left driving his beautiful BMW M6, which got us very quickly down to Florida, with few excitements on the way, including being stopped by Georgia's finest just south of Atlanta, given a speeding ticket, and told to go to the local penitentiary, which is where we quickly paid the $80 and carried on. Yeah, it was quite an experience. I have to describe the policeman who stopped us. He was a bit terrifying. Anyway, we carried on to Miami and met our friend Peter Caldwell, who lives in a nice penthouse apartment on Venetian Way. So we had dinner with him and a nice evening in Coconut Grove. And then the next day, Peter took us in his car to Ocean Reef. Ocean Reef, I don't know if any of you have ever been there. It's the most beautiful self-contained luxury residential recreational development I've ever seen. Set in about 5,000 acres of land, magnificent houses. It also has its own ambulance, police, airport, library, restaurants, hotel, marina, beaches, as well as 3 golf courses. And in fact, it appears that the only problem they have among people who live there is it's been woken up at 6 o'clock in the morning by the Lear jets going to New York, or by people's shrouds slapping against the halyards slapping against the mast during from the yacht from the marina. Anyway, talking about the yacht, this is the picture of Ocean Reef. Maybe you can hold the next one. Anyway, oh, that's right. There's the golf courses, and I'll be the next one too. That's in their marina. Anyway, the boat we sailed was a Bristol 41, and if you can show the next slide, next few slides. There's a picture of this. This is what it looks like. Go on to this. This isn't the actual boat. As I said, we lost all our films from the trip, so this is taken from the website. Anyway, next one. This is down below. Next. Very moving. The next one. This is interesting. The boat had a boom furling system for the main. That's just the statistics of the boat, which it was actually designed by Ted Wood. And then the next thing I show you is our route, which is on the next chart. Next picture should be the one after that. There we go. So where we started from Ocean Reef in Florida down to Key West, and across to Marina Hemingway in Cuba, and from there a long sail to 2 days and 2 nights to Isla Mujeres in the north end of the Yucatan Peninsula, and then down the coast to Belize. And that's when John and I left, and Fred and Asta continued on to Guatemala, and they left their boat in the Lake Isabel, which is a sort of safe haven for boats during the hurricane season. And it's also happened that John and I have been invited to our dear friend Eddie Kester's daughter's wedding in Richmond, Virginia. So we were hoping after this cruise that we would be able to go. So on May 14th, we left Ocean Reef, found a nice breeze, 5 to 7 knots, taking us down the port quarter. Got as far as Upper Medicum Bay along the Florida Keys and got anchor. One of the things we found that when the wind picked up at night time, our anchor would drag, and this became a regular occurrence. Anyway, that evening, John served an excellent dinner, and as I said, the wind gets up during the night and it drags the anchor about 100 yards. I should also mention at this point we had another member of the crew who was called Hooter, who's a beautiful Manx cat who usually complained about the noise, and but was a great companion. And the skipper, Fred Evans, he was known as Fearless Fred. And you see why during the talk. So we continued on the next day and set fishing rods and caught a yellowfin tuna. And then after that, we caught a bigger one. We caught a 15-pound barracuda, which Fred carefully removed and put back in the ocean. We had a splendid lunch by chef, washed down by a nice bottle of Chardonnay. We continued on. Nice breezes. We didn't make Key West, but docks at Newfound Harbour, a sheltered picturesque spot. And we take a gander at Little Palm Island, which is a 5-star restaurant hotel. May 16th. Another early rising, 7 o'clock. Up anchor, which is dragged halfway across the bay again, and motor past Little Palm Island, where people were riding for their $70 bread pancakes. Mostly motor sail with Jenny and arrive at Key West midday. Find suitable mooring and repair to the half-shell raw bar for an excellent lunch. Walk into town where the action is on Duval Street, bustling with tourists and colorful locals. Tour the Hemingway House, thanks, right? A museum. This house. The next one is a museum. We go straight to Hemingway's bar called Captain Tony's, named after the local mayor. Margaritas all around, which Fred and Asta rate them as fair compared to those made on board. Now, the purpose of this trip, as far as our skipper was concerned, was to find the perfect margarita. That was his. We then depart, leaving the reggae sounds of Key West and head towards Cuba, and specifically towards Marina Hemingway, which is located west of Havana. Next slide. And the one after that. Oh, that was just sailing across, and the one after that. That showed us Marina Hemingway down on the left side, and you see how far it is in Havana. See how far it is in Havana. There was something very thrilling about sailing at full speed at night. However, such an exciting and bumpy ride didn't deter a chef from preparing an excellent dinner of smashed fuzz, pork chops, and eggs. To watch chef keeping everything else in balance in rough weather is a sight to behold. I should also add that John is food as a chef on the Fastnet race. So again, after midnight, we decide to rotate the 2-hour watches. Fred takes the first watch and JB decides to sleep on deck. I go to my bunk and I'm rudely awakened at 2 a.m. by the engine going on. Well, I wonder, isn't this supposed to be a luxury Caribbean cruise? By 2 a.m., the lights of Key West fade to the north and we are all alone in deep water. Occasionally we see other boats. We adjust for a right course variance of the run line, knowing that it will be counteracted by the Gulf Stream in mid-channel, which is indicated on the charts at around 2 knots. 6 a.m. dawn approaches, but 7 a.m. we see land. It appears to be at the east end of Havana. We call Marina Hemingway on the VHF, my first experience with this contraption. Contact the harbour master, who fortunately speaks English, and I do okay, but I get in a fluster when he asks for the name of our yacht in international phonetic alphabet. Tango, Hotel, Echo, Lima, Alpha, Delta, etc. I'm glad I was in the secrets. Remember that. Anyway, we are informed that Marina Hemingway is 13.5 nautical miles west of Havana and west of Havana waypoint. And so we continue in that direction. And coming to Marina Hemingway and stop at the customs dock. Customs is actually carried out in a very friendly manner and involved 4 separate visits from health, immigration, customs, and coast guard, all provided with beer. On top of this, one of the customs officers asked me, you have camera? I said, yeah. You have film for camera? Yeah, you can do it. Oh, with my wife, we have a little bambino a week ago, but we have no film for camera. So this is back in the days before, the cell phones and that sort of. So I handed over a reel of film, and feeling rather annoyed about it, but on reflection, particularly when we, from our experiences in Mexico, we felt that, well, there's a lot of things we take for granted that Cubans don't have, so we wouldn't feel too bad about it. Well, the other thing that happened was the Coast Guard confiscated Fred's stainless steel 12-bore shotgun, which he had on board, and said they would return it at the end of our trip. Marina Hemingway is a government-run marina, and sorry. Wait, sorry. Yes, yeah, the marina is very government run. It's quite well laid out, lots of landscaping, although not to the standard of Ocean Reef Marina. Shore power plugs were Russian. We had to wait till 7 p.m. for a Cuban electrician to come around and hotwire our North American plug to theirs. And water was available, but only for 2 hours a day. The marina contained boats from all over the world: Canada, Denmark, Jersey, England, Georgetown. And the facilities of the marina included a large open air bar, restaurants, a cigar store, liquor store selling excellent Cuban rum, and a small supermarket. And we chatted with Mark, the helpful American, who was captain of the large 55-footer, owner of the boat. The owner of the boat is somebody called David Palen from Toronto. Mark's qualified architect who has not followed his chosen career. He looks after this boat together with his own. And he recommends a restaurant within walking distance down several side streets called Sand King. Tiny fish restaurant overlooking the river. It has a menu of color pictures of available dishes. And I go for the lobster thermidor, which is excellent. You go to the next slide. That's typical. A bit more developed since when I was there. In the next one. That's going the layout. Anyway, the next day, May the 18th, we arranged for a local taxi driver to take us into Havana. Wait for 2 hours and then bring us back again. All for $20. 30K around trip. The taxi is a 1958 Ford Consul, and I noted that the door handle was broken and was replaced with a typical domestic brass slot, the sort of thing on the back of your bathroom door. A driver took us past all the embassies, beautiful buildings along wide tree-lined avenues or anchors. All the cars were all Russian and American models. Asta recognized its 1957 Chevy, which looked like a car she once owned. We continued on the coast road past La Puerta to the old city. We spent 2 hours walking about looking at the old stone buildings. Have a beer in the square and are entertained by a small group of musicians, kettle drum, maracas, and two guitars. It's great music. We visit the old castle, complete with moat, contains a selection of ceramic art. We return to our taxi driver and then continues the tour past the old palace. Back to base Hemingway at 2 p.m. We decided to stay another night before leaving on Sunday. Customs clearance will be quick, says Fred. I only have to pick up a gun. As we subsequently found out, his faith in Cuban bureaucracy was somewhat misguided. So we sat around, jammed with neighbours, especially the crew of a Guernsey registered boat carrying two very nice looking British girls. One hailed from Kingston upon Thames. And we got the feeling, we got the impression that they wanted to jump ship as their boat was stuck for a while, pending repair to the rudder. Or was it wishful thinking on our part? Our skipper, we decided our skipper and mate would have been quite likely been disapproved of the two extra crew. And if the Cuban authorities had turned up, we'd probably still be in prison.
Is it possible to make the flight bigger? No, it's not.
Anyway, before dinner, Fred, JB, and I go in search of the harbour master to pay for our mooring. Have a drink at the bar, which is quite empty. We are told that it doesn't get going until 12 AM. Party time is 12 to 4 AM. However, the place is not entirely devoid of action, because on our way back, Fred, mind you, and not me or John, is accosted by two local ladies of the night. You, me, find out, said the other one. Fred is spellbound and puts on a typical milk and penny look, dazed by his unbelievable good fortune. More like, I come to the rescue in broken Spanish. Mon amigo tiene una esposa de la yacht. Narrow escape. Another great dinner is served. And this time we batten down the hatches and have the air conditioning going at full blast. May the 19th. Up at the Lark, carefully dismantle the shore power connections ourselves. John finds the dock march and settles up about $45 for 2 days. Yeah, pretty not bad. On to customs. Well, as expected by everyone except Fred, you go through the whole process again. Customs, immigration, health, and finally the Coast Guard who returns to the toll bridge. Leave at 11 AM, but the main reef is stuck, having been wound down anti-clockwise around the boom on the way inshore. I don't know who did that, but I've always said to him, clockwise. We have to return and drop the anchor and practically dismantle the roller reefing system. Finally, at 12:15, we leave and head west. We plan to sail non-stop to Isla Mujeres, which is an intriguing name and translates into Island of Women in Mexico. And this is 280 nautical miles. We assume will take about 46 hours. A magic speed of 6 knots. A double overnighter in store, which is the longest continuous sail for me. We sailed past Bahia Honda and on down the north coast of Cuba. People ask us if we had any difficulties entering Cuba. There were no signs of US naval patrol vessels, and we are all Canadian. And the Lady Asta's port of registry is Toronto. And the Cubans are very hospitable and hospitable, especially in Las Niñas. Chef again serves an excellent dinner, and then after midnight we set our 3-hour watches, and the wind picks up 15 knots, so we have a nice sail. Halfway through the night, the jib sheet comes unloose. The jib flaps, making a terrible noise, which terrifies Hooter and makes a dash from the cabin towards the stern and disappears. We searched the boat high and low, while there is no sign of our beautiful Manx cat. They're already upset, particularly Asta. Can you go on to the next slide, please? Oh yeah, I should have shown you some of these. But yeah, just slowly go through these. This is Cuba. See the cars. Next one.
Michael, what year was this?
2006. Yeah, next one. So that's the anyway, next one. Oh yes. So this is where we found in the morning. This is where we found Hooter. Hooter had hidden himself in this little pocket here. So everything was okay.
I guess he wouldn't jump overboard.
Yeah, I know. So, the next day, May the 20th, we continued on. Windy, cloudy weather, many showers, intermittent sun. Winds are generally good. We have a good lunch. We have a light lunch with sandwiches and dinner and soup. We sun watches again, wonderful cumulus nebulous clouds followed by a magnificent sunset. Next day, May 25th. This chapter I call Memories of Mexico. We made excellent time. The boat is 13 nautical miles to the left of the run line to allow for the current, which reportedly increases to about 2 to 5 knots at this point. Distance between the western tip of Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula is about 90 miles. The Gulf Stream from the Caribbean Sea flows into the Gulf of Mexico through a relatively narrow gap, which is 50 miles off Bristol Harris. The current increases, and we alter course to the south 110 degrees to stay close to the run line. Despite speeds of 6 knots, the SOG, or speed over ground, is down to 3 to 4 knots due to the current. During the crossing, we catch a tuna and barracuda, which we decide to keep. It turns out to be a good choice. Noon, sight of Bristol Harris from about 5 miles offshore. I can pick out the coastline, which is dominated by El Presidente Hotel, a 6-story pyramid-shaped building. Hawkeye's Asta points out to El Capitan that the chart indicates a buoy 1/4 mile north of the hotel, which we should leave to port, but he ignores it too. Instead, he's on a prescribed course of 271 degrees, which he thinks will take us into the channel. Meanwhile, we were heading directly for El Presidente Hotel. As official navigator, Asta summons me to arbitrate with him. I inform El Capitan that while the course may be correct, the boat is 300 yards south of the upper ley line, and we are heading steeply towards terra firma. I suggest a 20-degree course change to the north. Skipper gets quite upset and reluctantly concurs with my suggestion. We then find them out and rounded and up to the channel. First impressions of El Presidente Hotel, which features in the Caribbean guidebook, is that it looks desolate, as if a hurricane has hit it. The impression is subsequently proved to be right by closer inspection. We enter the harbour and look for anchorage. Asta's doing her usual thing, screaming orders from the bow to Fred, and eventually we get the anchor to hold, half a mile from the main dock. Then into town for customs, etc. However, the port captain's office is closed, and we have to return in the morning. After cleaning up and getting things in shipshape, I suggest that we go ashore and find a pleasant restaurant and try to alleviate the tension and cabin fever that is amazing. It's amazing how 48 hours solid sailing trains one. I wonder how these long distance sailors do it, and particularly after last week, if you were here for Melody's talk, it's just amazing how you can deal with that long distance sailing. Anyway, our plan for going ashore is subsequently amended after John's, and also Cuba and Mexico, followed by Fred's very good margaritas. Therefore, the executive decision is made. Stay on board and barbecue the fish we have caught. I put in charge of rigging the barbecue and the stern and cooking the potatoes, cooking the meal. It was a great success, with none of these falling into the drink while we had it. My second triumph that evening was rigging a hammock between the mast and the forestay and sleep peacefully under the stars. That was the life. And then on the next day, May 22nd, we moved the Lady Asta to a slip at Clubby Yachts, more beside a $1 million racing catamaran, $1 million racing catamaran, and freed a similarly priced fishing boats they're taking part in a dual fishing competition. Other boats in the dock include a three-masted square rigger known as the Baltic Trader. We go into town, which is interesting. It's a little real Mexican village, with small hotels, restaurants, and a variety of shops selling everything from t-shirts to jewelry and Mexican silverware. The yacht is extremely friendly and has a laundromat, power, shore power, and water 24 hours a day, with a change from Marina anyway. Oh, next slide, please. One of the sorry. We decided we go to the beach, all of us in the dinghy, and we go ashore, and Fred and Asta head downtown to do some shopping while Tom and I went to look at the open perfection of the El Presidente Hotel. Sure enough, it's derelict. No. We subsequently find out the hotel was built in the 70s, ran unsuccessfully for 7 to 8 years, was damaged by a hurricane, repaired, reopened 2 years later, and was hit by another hurricane 4 years ago, which was in 2002. We returned to the beach to find Fred and Asta, but no dinghy. Which missing. Possibly drifted away on the rising tide. I persuaded a local fisherman to take us out into the harbour for $20, tour around to see if we can find it. No sign of it. So we returned to the Lady Asta, and then John and I go to the port captain's office to report the loss. First to the helpful people of the company yachts, who write a note in Spanish of the full particulars of the missing boat. Then to the port captain. On entering the office, I nearly trip over a familiar-looking Honda engine. I give the official the written notes, and he seriously contemplates it. After I recognize the motor. The port captain smiles and takes us outside and shows us our dinghy, complete with a bag of clothes, which also contains Asta's and my wristwatches. However, we cannot retrieve anything now, but we'll have to return at 10 a.m. the next day. Why, I'm not sure. We called skipper on channel 16. Back to the boat, we're celebrating margaritas, being cocktailed by Fred, and a good evening was had by all. May the 23rd, returned to the port captain to review dinghy and accoutrements, to retrieve dinghy and accoutrements, together with Fred. However, we are told that the dinghy was found floating in the harbour by an honest fisherman who wants salvage. Must be worth $800, said the official. We protest, saying it was 10 years old and the engine was working very well. Meanwhile, the official takes a liking to Fred's favorite Florida Martins baseball cap. Then eventually we get the honest fisherman on channel 16 who jabbers away in Spanish on how he found the boat drifting in the harbour and took it to the customs office, which you don't believe for a moment. In fact, we realized the tide was actually going out when we left it on the shore. Eventually, after much bargaining, Fred has to pay $70 plus give his favorite Florida Martins, Florida man cap away. So he's more annoyed about that than paying $70. Then back to the boat. And I gambled with an American skipper on the Sunday's Child, a sleek 55-foot yacht. He recommends visiting Puerto Morelos and Los Pelicanos restaurant and ask for Damien, the manager. So we check out of Las Islas Mujeres at 11:30 a.m. and head down to Puerto Morelos. Uneventful trip with fair sailing. Arrive at 5 p.m. This time finding the port, finding the marks and anchoring goes like clockwork. Anchor holes this time 100 yards from the shore. I guess practice makes perfect. Puerto Morelos is a small village noted for its pizza like, could you make some? Yeah, yeah, no, sorry, this is no, it was pizza like, pizza like, lighthouse. It was also hit by a hurricane at some stage. And then the next one. This was the Los Pelicanos restaurant. So we go ashore and we go to the restaurant and we find Damien at the restaurant. What a wonderful man. As Asta said, you want to pick him up and cuddle him and take him home. In my mind, he reminded me of Yoda. He was so wise and the most delightful character. Sometimes you meet people in this world that make an everlasting impression on you, and he was one of them. So we start with margaritas and realize that we've reached Fred's goal of finding the perfect margarita. And this is followed by a delightful dinner of fish together with excellent wine and interesting conversations with Damien. Next day, May 24. Wait, another beautiful day in paradise. Brisk winds from the east and anchor didn't drag. Usual breakfast of fruit and black coffee with rum. Oh, I forgot to mention at the beginning, this is our breakfast every morning given by Asta, coffee and rum. Get us going. So we make a run, we make a grocery run and then buy t-shirts and a cap for Fred, and blazer with Cancun knockoff to replace his Florida Marlins cap. Back to Los Pelicanos for more margaritas and lunch. Damien introduces to El Captain Barrio, a mechanic who claims he can fix the propeller. He spends 3 hours replacing the shaft, but it doesn't function any better. Another $20 down the drain. Next day, May 25th, we sail and arrive at Bahia de la Asunción at dawn. We take up a course to the entrance and completely miss the sighting of the reef, running parallel at about 1 mile from shore, and quickly running out of depth. Immediately about turn and spot the reef 5 miles out to sea. Turns out that we had taken the correct course after all between the reefs without knowing it. And you're relying on one thing you should mention that Fred, before he did the trip, he got his chart maker, his chart supplier, to give him every chart. So here's the route, and I've just want all the charts. And we had them with a big roll, we just peel off the next one when we got. So when we come that is from the Harris, the next chart was missing. There was no chart between there and Belize. So the only thing we could rely on was the cruising guide to Belize, Mexico, and Caribbean coast by Freya Rushina, which is actually still available. I noticed it's still available in the local nautical mind. But one of the things this book says is it had pictures of charts on it, and it said don't use these charts, don't consider them accurate. However, so anyway, we managed with just using the book to find a place to anchor, and the next day we were setting out to Cayo Norte, but we discovered that it doesn't seem to be a very protected place, so we changed our mind and we decided to head for Bahia del Espíritu Santo. Now, I say a little prayer to the Holy Ghost, but that's to no avail. Once inside the reef, spotted it this time, we ran too close to Owen Island and ran aground. This is at 2 p.m. We tried reversing the motor and a use of the Jenny. And this is the rest of something, following is something like out of a Monty Python skit. So we tried putting the anchor in the boat, and John was trying to motor to get, because of the engine not working very well, it wouldn't pull the anchor and motor away from the boat. So. So then he tried rowing. John, I think, thought was probably starting the Oxford and Cambridge boat race. He sits there, he's pulling, huge pull on the two oars, and one snaps. Doesn't know his own strength. Snaps the oar, and then so it's one oar left, so he's in the bow, paddling, trying to, and the boat's just going around in circles. And fortunately, at that time, a fishing boat called La Nina appears with 4 Mexicans aboard, and they take the anchor and drop it off the port beam. We try winching it, but it drags. They reset it again, and this time it works. And as long as we provided them with lots of beers, and they buy about a slowly turned around and we put it out, and they anchor it for us in deeper water. During next day the next day, May 27th, we're up early at 6 a.m. and away at 7. Tough motoring in heavy seas between the 2 reefs. One scary moment when the reef gauge, when the depth gauge goes from 25 feet to 12 feet. Fred and Asta nearly had heart attacks. However, a depth comes 2 returns. Once clear of the reefs, we set a course of 180 degrees to Ixtlac, which is the border town between Mexico and Belize, 66 nautical miles. We sail a reef main full jenny in 25-knot breeze. A great sail. Arrive at Ixtlac just after dark with heavy rollers. The book, Caribbean Guide, says it's clearly marked by a range given by two lights. Now, a range as you and I use to say you're sailing up the channel to the RCYC is 2 fixed red lights. You line them up and you're going. Not here, there are 2 flashing lights. They flash here so you're trying to keep the course. And you can see the waves breaking over the reefs. And there's just a 75-yard gap to go through. It's pretty terrifying. Anyway, fearless Fred lives up to his name, and we go straight through into the harbour and find a mooring next to 3 other sailboats, and the anchor holds this time. So this is like chapter 4, called the Ixtlac experience. So we go ashore slowly in the dink with his duck propeller, find the port captain and ask for permission to exit Mexico. Port closed due to strong winds, 25 to 30 knots, and 18-foot waves. You cannot leave until mañana, says the official. Fred and I resign ourselves to another day with the Mexican bureaucracy. We get our papers stamped and we go to immigration, which is 4 blocks away. All through a poor-looking village, framed houses, some on stilts, one small hotel. The immigration officer, a typical Mexican civil servant, slowly opens a large ledger and laboriously enters details for our passports. He then wants to see the other crew members in person. We make the excuse about our duff, a small dinghy with a duff engine. And the officer says that this will overlook it this time, but giving the impression that a tip will be ignored. Having completed the exercise of stamping of passports, it's taking away our Mexican travel permits, we had to take our leave. And we go on to search for a telephone to arrange John and I's flight back to Belize, from Belize to Miami. During our mission ashore, Fred and I run into the skippers of the 3 sailboats that we were moored against the side, and also 3 trawlers that were there. And all of the skippers were amazed. Apparently, we were the talk of the town. Those crazy canoes coming in at night. They also told us of another yacht. They hit the reef 2 days earlier, about 20 miles to the north, and was stuck there. So Fred and I picked up local groceries and returned to the boat. For the rest of the day, Fred fiddles with the prop and I call the dive shop and arrange for a boat to take us out to the reef for some snorkeling. On our return, Fred said that a dealership in town was going to take a look at the engine. There's no sign of a repaired engine. So about 9 o'clock, one of the American skippers turns up with the prop saying that the prop is we could do nothing about it. So it's still no improvement. Next slide. This is going back to this one to Puerto Morel is the Los Panicos restaurant. This is inside, very attractive. In fact, when I was putting the slide together, I went on the website to look it up because I didn't have any pictures, and it's still there. And I was looking through the menu, so much so that I wanted to hop on the next plane to go down there. That really is a superb restaurant. It's still going. So if ever you're in that part of the world, I recommend it. Oh, the next one. Oh, that's the perfect margarita. And next. Oh, that was just it. Well, I thought sort of like one of our nights should be next one. I'm going to show very much of the north end is Bristol, and then San Pedro is about the middle, which is where we're going to. So we okay, so we're still working on the plot and not getting anywhere. And John and I is getting very close to where we're supposed to leave to go to our friend's wedding. And Fred says, there's no way I'm endangering my boat for you and John to go to a wedding, said our skipper. So we have a Mexican standoff. We'll wait for the weather forecast from Belize City. It appears that the conditions are brighter, 10 to 15 knots south-southwest. Wait till 10 a.m. and inspect the reef seas, which appear to be calmer than the previous day. Pull up anchor and head for the gap at full speed, still comparatively large waves flowing against us. As we navigate the gap at one point, our speed falls only to 1 knot. Fearless Fred lives up to his name, manages to get us through the gap. Another conquest. Then we set sail south, the first waypoint at Rocky Point. John and I put up a reef mainsail, motor sail to Rocky Point, then on to San Pedro, which is wind at 60 degrees. Pop the jenny and have a sleigh ride, hitting 8.7 knots at one point. This is one of the best, most exciting trips of the trip. We arrive at the entrance of San Pedro at 2 p.m. Entering San Pedro provides the greatest challenge yet. Remember, we still don't have a chart. However, the book says, do not attempt to attempt in daylight, do not attempt except in daylight and in calm conditions. We have 20 to 25 knot winds and large waves breaking over the reef. Also, directions for the entry given by the cruising guide are as follows. It says, look for a 2-story building with an arched window and a red Roman tile roof. Set a course at 290 degrees. Once between the 2 outer reefs, look for a small reef immediately ahead and make a sharp right turn and head 20 degrees to starboard into the harbour. It appears, since that book was written 4 years ago, a number of 2-story buildings with red arched roofs have been built. So anyway, Asta eventually gets hold of a port captain, and after trying for a while, and who says, just look for the yellow buoy in the entrance and pass to port. Or did she say, leave it to port? We get closer, and the reef and the reef and spotting a yellow buoy. That's it. JB and I can see it. We can see it, but Fred can't, who's at the helm. And we call her Eagle Eyes, but now she's still talking to the port captain. About 200 yards to the reef closing. Fred starts to panic, which is a rare occurrence. The port captain offers to send down a small boat to bring us in. So we accept to do a 180-degree turn and wait for the escort, and soon arrives. We turn and head for the narrow gap between the reef and them. And sure enough, there's another reef ahead. We turn right to avoid it. Anchor to the north, opposite the Texaco dock. A couple of margaritas to calm nerves. Go ashore and wander along the beach, admiring the beautiful little town of San Pedro. It's lovely resort hotels, streets of sand, full of people and interesting little shops and restaurants. Opposite the Texaco station is the Belize Yacht Club Hotel, which is an attractive place. John and I check it out and buy our tickets to Belize City via Tropic Air, then the next day. The police are helpful and speak good English. He tells us that we can check customs when we get to Belize City. You relax at Big Daddy's bar and get 4 recommendations of the same restaurant. After purchasing gifts, head down to the sandy main street to the attractive restaurant, again with its high peaked roof. Good service, excellent food and wine. Bit of a change, nice change from Mishkeland. Sorry, motor back to Lady Asta. Oh, let me put on the next slide. These next two are these are in San Pedro. So this is the last night on the boat, and I sleep in the cockpit. I wake up at 4 a.m. and see a large tug carrying a large barge and tug coming straight at us stern. I find a flashlight and shine it at the oncoming barge, which at the last minute changes direction. We drift into the channel. After breakfast, John and I call a water taxi and say our goodbyes to Fred and Asta. Hooter. Head for the Belize Yacht Club Hotel, where they kindly let us use their showers. John and I, freshly clean and desalted, have time for a couple of pina coladas before heading to the plane. A pleasant flight to Belize City Airport. While waiting in the lounge, however, we have to put up with sniffer dogs checking our baggage for drugs. We had an uneventful flight to Miami. Peter Caldwell meets us at the airport and takes us to his favorite bar for a few beers. Then back to his pad for a quick change, and then we head out again for a nice dinner. And the last chapter we call Racing to Richmond. John and I get up at 4 a.m. next morning. Managed to leave at 5 and head to Richmond, Virginia for the wedding party that evening. Just to remind you, our friend Ellie Kester's daughter is getting married the following day in Richmond. And we have been invited to the dinner. And we're trying to get there on time. We reached Richmond at 8 p.m, just in time for dinner and the wedding party. Talk about Southern hospitality. I had never been made so welcome by strangers, particularly arriving late for dinner. John causes a sensation by appearing sockless, which is better than quick. Well, anyway, it makes a change from him being footless. So we stay in a hotel that night in a large comfortable bed and do a bit of shopping the next morning. I buy a pair of coal hard shoes, as my top siders are probably not suitable for the occasion. And John buys some socks. We drive out to a beautiful old private school, which is located on a lovely old English style house, brick with a slate roof, and attractive terrace garden. Wedding ceremony is quite short, then an informal reception with no speeches. It was a great party, and I enjoyed meeting the Pady family as well as the local Virginians. June 2nd, John and I have to forgo this Sunday brunch and then head back to heading back to Toronto. We make it back by 7:30 p.m. Just to wrap up, John and I really enjoyed the trip. A lot happened in a short space of time, and we covered quite a distance. It was actually 600 nautical miles. And I think particularly when you compare our speed to the average cruisers, most of them spend at least a week in each port, explore every Mayan ruin, don't leave until the conditions are perfect. But, you know, I would call fair weather sailors. However, it's a bit envious, so I'd love to take about 6 months more to sailing there and not rushing. Fred and Asta continued on their trip by themselves to Guatemala, specifically to Lake Isabel, which is a nice hiding hole for boats during the hurricane season. They returned to Ocean Reef, went back in the spring to sail Lady Asta back again. This time with our old friends Bob Purcell and John McDonald, the Odyssey. My advice to them on the way trip back was to spend time on the Belize coast, exploring the caves and atoll. The reef widens considerably in Belize, with a number of large caves, and we sail between the mainland and the outer reef safe. I've been there a couple of times with some of my Odyssey buddies, some of whom are here today. Then we suggested going straight to San Pedro, to Isla Mujeres, perhaps with a stop at Puerto Moroles to a perfect margarita and chat with Yoda. Then back to Florida Cays, we'll probably miss out Cuba, except Fred might want his $5 special. I personally enjoyed the voyage, thanks to Fred and Asta. Bristol 41 was a great boat. Fred and Asta were wonderful hosts. As John put it, Fred acts half his age and Asta looks it. All in all, the trip was a good thing, or to quote the fearless one, it was a slice. I found the M6 a joy to drive, a beautiful car and a real class act, like its owner.